Şimdi de global tedarik zincirlerinin konuşulacağı oturumumuz başlıyor. Moderatörümüz ve konuşmacılarımızı alkışlarınızla sahneye davet ediyorum. Oturum moderatörümüz Mavi CEO'su Cüneyt Yavuz. Konuşmacılarımız Ralph Lauren Global Tedarik Kıdemli Başkan Yardımcısı Greg Zanam. Mealtime CEO'su Alex Angelchik. VF Corporation Napapijri İnovasyon Tedarik Kıdemli Direktörü Bhavesh Naik. Kuvvetli bir alkış. Ve The United States Fashion Industries Vice President Samantha Sault. Ve sözü moderatörümüz Cüneyt Yavuz'a bırakıyorum.
Please have a seat. Welcome home. Welcome to our meeting. So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to start with Samantha. We've talked about Mr. Trump in one way or another. And as we got the opportunity to have Samantha here with us, what we'll do is we'll ask her to give a slide presentation, a quick presentation, and give us a perspective on how things are from a US perspective, how the business world is evolving, how the textile industry is evolving. And after that, we'll move on to we have very valuable panelists with us. I'll do the introduction when the time comes around, not to waste any time. So let's hit the road, Samantha. So it's over to you.
Sure, absolutely. So I think we have some slides.
It's going to come up.
Okay.
We'll have the presentation up. We have a presentation.
So for those of you who aren't familiar, the U.S. Fashion Industry Association represents fashion brands, retailers, importers, and wholesalers, primarily based in the United States and doing business globally. So some of the biggest brands and retailers, I think many in this room today. And we are located in Washington, D.C. I like to show this map so you can see exactly where we are in Washington, D.C. on Pennsylvania Avenue, just a few blocks from our president, Donald Trump. And so in Washington, we try to predict what's going to happen with trade policy. And so I'll provide a brief update on some of the things that we've been hearing and seeing in Washington. And when we're trying to make these predictions, all we have to do actually is look at the president's words. So about a year ago, he said, "I want tariffs, bring me some tariffs." We can also look at his tweets. Here are just a few of his tweets on trade. Trade wars are good and easy to win, he said. He's working on fixing some of the worst and most unfair trade deals ever made by any country. Important to this week, he talked about NAFTA as the worst trade deal ever made and threatened to terminate it. And if you're familiar with this book, you know that this is Trump's way. He likes to keep people guessing, and he likes to keep the upper hand. So what exactly has he done? Well, actually, he's done a lot of the things that he said he would do. As I mentioned, he renegotiated the North American Free Trade Agreement. As of last week, it's now called the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Not quite as catchy as NAFTA, but it's something. And for our industry in particular, he's been imposing new penalty tariffs on imports from China. And in fact, we are seeing some of these imports hit the fashion industry now. I've highlighted the third list of tariffs that went into effect on September 24th, just last week, with 10% additional tariffs on many consumer products. In fact, hats, headwear, leather apparel and accessories, handbags, wallets, furniture, and textiles are just some of the products on that list that are facing these tariff increases. So we've been very busy in our office on Pennsylvania Avenue. And what's on the horizon? We're fully expecting more trade restrictions and penalty tariffs to come into effect. President Trump has been threatening to place tariffs on all imports from China, so that is something we are watching very closely. As you may have seen, our president, Julie Hughes, was supposed to be here today, but she had to stay in Washington to deal with these issues and meet with administration officials. Of course, the administration is discussing the possibility of some bilateral trade agreements, most notably with the United Kingdom after Brexit. I'm in Geneva half the time. I've heard some rumblings of a potential agreement with Switzerland, Japan, some other countries as well, but you know, we really are focused on these tariffs and what it means for the industry. And so I'm going to talk a little bit, very briefly, about what fashion brands and retailers are thinking about this, but then more importantly, what this means for all of you and some of the opportunities that this brings for the industry in Turkey. So USFIA conducts a study every year of the leading brands and retailers. We survey about 30 executives from some of the biggest brands. I can't name who they are, but brands that you definitely know and do business with. And so here are their top business concerns for the year ahead. Number one is the protectionist trade policy agenda in the United States. So as you saw in the previous slides, this is a big concern. Number two, market competition from e-commerce. We make the distinction between e-commerce and conventional peer competitors. So interestingly, executives are more concerned about competition from e-commerce. Number three is increasing production or sourcing cost, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. I also highlighted number 7, finding a new sourcing base other than China. We are seeing brands and retailers actively looking for new sourcing destinations and as a way to mitigate these problems with the trade policy agenda and the increasing sourcing cost. So just some interesting stats about what brands think about trade protectionism. It was ranked the #1 concern for the second year in a row. So in 2017 and in 2018, this is executives' biggest concerns, and I look forward to hearing what these executives think about that as well. What's really interesting is that before 2016, so before Trump was the nominee for the Republican Party, brands weren't really thinking about trade protectionism that much. It was ranked between number 8 and number 11. But now a majority of executives think this is one of the top challenges to doing business. And we also are seeing cost pressure returning this year. So if you look at this chart, I don't know if you can see the numbers, but the bottom row is 2017, and the red and the pink is what brands, how they perceived cost increases as having a substantial, modest, or slight cost increase. And you can see in 2018, this has increased quite a bit. And just a look at what executives see as the biggest factors impacting cost. Labor cost, 93% say that labor cost will be one of the biggest factors impacting these cost increases, but of course also trade barriers and compliance, as well as relevant to our discussions today, cost related to factory, social, and environmental compliance. And I just wanted to show this quote as well. This is from one of the brands who completed the survey last year. They said, "We will never be completely out of China due to their speed and ease of doing business. The only thing that could change is a protectionist trade agenda." So now that we are seeing this protectionist trade agenda go into effect in the United States, but also elsewhere in the world, that number 7, back a few slides earlier, the fact that brands are looking for new sourcing destinations is becoming all the more important to try to combat this trade agenda. And of course, this year over last year, sourcing cost and finding this new sourcing base, executives said that's even more important this year than last year. So what does that mean for the textile and apparel industry here in Turkey and your opportunities in the United States? Well, I think that this is a great time for you to do more business with the United States to try to capture some of that market share. I would say that it's probably one of the best times ever, looking at those concerns, concerns about the trade agenda, concerns about cost, and the need to find new sourcing destinations. It's really a great time to increase your business with US brands. I have just a few more slides to show you. Turkey actually has been increasing your imports to the United States already. In 2017, you were ranked number 14 for total textile and apparel imports. And now for the year ending in June, you're already up to number 12 with a 20% increase in value. Apparel-specific imports also increased about 15% in value in the last year. And if you're thinking about what are some of the biggest opportunities for doing more business with US brands and retailers, here are some of the fastest growing products. So I chose these products because they have a fairly high value that you're already importing into the United States. But the growth has been rather massive for some of them. So for example, for man-made fiber slacks, we saw a 56% growth in value in the last year in what you're shipping to the United States. Also knit shirts, wool slacks, and blouses as well. And I think we can share these slides if people are interested to see this. And so just to wrap up, you know, the trade agenda is a big concern in the United States. We're facing new tariffs. We're facing uncertainty with our supply chains. And of course, we're facing concerns about cost. But the economy is strong. I think retail is doing well. For the last couple years, there's been a lot of talk about the death of retail. But I think that the economy is strong. So, you know, combined with Turkey's high-quality, experienced supply chain and your cost-effective apparel manufacturing supply chain, I think this equals a really big opportunity for Turkey. And just so that we don't end on a down note talking about trade, I do like to show that the industry is in fact optimistic and more optimistic this year than they were last year. When we conducted this survey in 2017, we took the poll in March and April of 2017, so that was just after the Trump administration took office. Only about 71% of executives were optimistic. And this year, it jumped back up to 84%. So I think there's a lot of opportunity both in the United States, but also for Turkish manufacturers. And so I'd be happy to take any questions.
Samantha, thanks a lot for setting the ground. A big hand of applause. I think what Samantha just presented sets a good tone in terms of the discussion that we can go into now, deep dive. We had a US perspective now. But what we can do, what we'll try to go and have a better understanding of what are, with our individual panelists here, what are the fundamental changes that they see in their companies in terms of purchasing strategies, sourcing strategies. Are they optimistic? Is life good? A good portion of business is about trust and being optimistic and positive about the outlook. What are your challenges moving down? Bhavesh, we'd like to start with you. May I ask you to do a minute, if possible, of introduction of who you are, so it puts us into a context of what your challenges and what business challenges you have, and we can maybe dive in and hear from you what purchasing and sourcing initiatives you're taking in your company.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. I'm Bhavesh. I work for a brand called Napapijri, which is based out of our European headquarters, which is part of the VF Group, VF Corporation, based in Stabio in Switzerland. I am in charge of production, sourcing, I would say, product development, innovation for the brand. Napapijri being the biggest anchor brand in Europe, so we do have a lot of, activities happening here in Stabio. So to your question, when I reflect back onto our sourcing strategy, I think as a company we have a very strong sourcing strategy, and that didn't start today or yesterday. It started from years from now. We introduced to the public a responsible sourcing program, and when we think of responsibility, we've had CSR responsibility checks on our factories with our partners. All of that stuff had been done for quite a few years from now. If we think of our sourcing roadmap, we are quite balanced when it comes to countries, regions, global. I mean, for example, I was just reading an internal communication where for our United States market, 40% of our products are still made in South America and not necessarily in China. And our exposure as a group to China is only 17%, 1/7. So that's not that big. So we're a pretty much balanced company. And when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to a lot of other measures or actions that we're hearing everybody is doing, we are also doing that. What I think, though, will change, and what we are doing internally, which I think we need to do, is to have more transparency, is to share whatever we are already doing to people, to the public, to consumers, because we are already doing great stuff. That doesn't mean that we think we're there. We still have a long, long way to go, but we're very confident that we're on the right track as a company.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Bhavesh is a good competitor of mine in an indirect way, as being part of the VF Corporation. He was just telling me that your company sells around 180 million pairs of jeans, if I got that right.
Well, roundabout, if I got mine.
We're still at 10,
right.
So I have a lot of catch up to play. So it gives us a good opportunity of what more we can do.
Absolutely.
And we'll get to that. I'll get back to that. But we'll move on to Alex. Alex is, VF Corporation, as you know, has many brands under their umbrella. Alex is a different story. Your company is totally accumulation of many brands coming to you for your services. Can you explain to the audience what you do, what your company does, and how and what is changing in this day and age when it comes to your strategies of purchasing and sourcing?
Good morning, everybody. Is this on?
As you go, I think they'll catch up with you.
So for those of you who don't know New Times is a privately held company based in Hong Kong. We're 60 years old. We land probably a little bit over $2 billion worth of product in the United States, Central America, and South America. A little bit of that goes to Europe. And we're a trading company, agency, and vendor, depending on the company within the group that you work with. We have 1,500 people in 42 offices around the world, with design centers in New York, Italy, India, Hong Kong. And I'm very optimistic about business today, and I'll tell you why. I have seen a shift in our customers, and we work with medium to high end, including Ralph Lauren. We do a little bit of business with VF, but our big accounts today are Nordstrom department store, Ann Taylor, American Eagle, Abercrombie, Diane Van Furstenberg, Vince. So what I see in the market in the United States, first of all, is a bettering of business. A feeling that business is growing again, which after 10 years was difficult for the majority of our customers. And more importantly for me, I see a new concentration on product design, product development. I see my customers willing to pay a little bit more if design and service is included in the production cycle, right? I see an interest in 3D, which is great for our industry and great for sustainability because we're moving away from making so many samples. That concentration on product to me is after 10 years of being killed by fast fashion. The U.S. retailers and wholesalers, I think, have figured out that they might not be able to compete in fast fashion the same way, but they can't compete with product because they do know their consumer. And so each one of our customers is going about it differently. our job as a multi-brand agent is really to customize the experience. So we build private offices for the majority of our customers, including Ralph Lauren. We have separate design centers for the customer, separate fabric teams for the customers. And we provide a very unique experience for them where they feel safe and comfortable to develop with us. And I think that's a differentiating factor that we find very positive and has paid off.
Thank you, Alex. We'll move on to Craig. Craig is based in Hong Kong. So he's in the so-called famous China region and carrying the flag for Ralph Lauren. So tell us a bit about what's happening, what's cooking on the Ralph Lauren side from your perspective.
Absolutely. Good morning and thank you. And as you say, I am based in Hong Kong and I'm responsible for global sourcing across all brands, genders, and categories. And to just give you a quick point of context, Ralph Lauren, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the brand and our core polo brand, but we are a family of brand. It includes other labels such as Lauren, Chaps, Club Monaco, and others. We are a multi-gender lifestyle brand. That means our category breadth is incredibly broad. From all categories of apparel for men, women, and children, but also all categories of home, tabletop, towels, textiles, footwear, accessories. So it's quite broad. So my context is not just through the lens of apparel, but that broader purview. I think one of the things that has really changed for sourcing for U.S. brands, and I can speak through this through the lens of not only Ralph Lauren, but the other companies rather that I've worked for, is historically we've been incredibly myopic. So everything is through the lens of what is the best for the U.S. business, as most U.S. brands have their core business in the U.S. While we are optimistic, and I think that's just generic with Americans, we're optimistic. Side note, since our president came into to power, I have begun to self-identify as a Canadian. So please don't ask me about Donald Trump. Okay. It was the golden years a few years ago when Obama was first elected that it was everyone was excited about having Americans.
Yeah.
You know, what goes around comes around. But to go back to what's going on here is everything historically has been through the lens of what is the best for the U.S. business. Well, the U.S. business has been really struggling. While there is optimism, there's still macroeconomics are at play. There's a supply-demand imbalance which is keeping prices low, which is why everyone is so focused still on cost, right? Because there's more product and more stores in the environment than there are customers. At Ralph Lauren, we feel very fortunate that our business is growing aggressively outside of the U.S. So today, we're 40% of our revenues are outside of the U.S., and our goal would be in the next, say, 3 years for that to be closer to 50%. And this then informs our sourcing strategy, and to have more matching between origin, sourcing origin, and distribution destination. And so for us, as it relates to Turkey, for example, it's really looking at not so much as Turkey as a sourcing origin for the U.S., although there are pockets of opportunity there, but more as matching Turkey to our very robust and quite profitable European business.
Thank you. Alex, if I may, I know you just mentioned Nordstrom, so can you just give us an insight, like Nordstrom from the outset, if you read the press, this bricks and mortar, department store it's also a business partner. I sell to Nordstrom, so long live Nordstrom, so I have nothing against them. But they're under a bit of a challenge, no? And how is that impacting your collaboration with them from a product sourcing perspective? How do they keep afloat, if I may say that?
That's a loaded question. Yeah. So the question is the challenges we face with Nordstrom and their sourcing strategy. Yeah. Nordstrom is a very complex company because the sourcing team is set up as a wholesale division of the retail company. So they actually go and they sell to the buyers as if they were a wholesale company with some guarantee of business, but not a total guarantee. Yeah, I mean, they're certainly a challenging customer. All customers are challenging in their own way. Nordstrom is, I mean, on the positive, they're, for us, a very loyal customer. We've done business for 10 years. We're expanding with them. We just built an office for them in India, taking over that business. There's a wide variety of product. You know, just as Craig mentioned, they do every category you can imagine. What's happened at Nordstrom, which I think is most significant for all of us, is that their buys are smaller and smaller. And that is an industry issue for most American companies. Yeah, I think the Europeans have always bought smaller to begin with. Now we're dealing with American companies that are buying, you know, 300 units of a style, you know, 466 units of a style.
Alex is looking at me.
Yeah.
Our minimum challenges.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit counterintuitive, you know, thinking of US and some brands like, I don't know if it's really the case, and also your case,
Yeah.
Craig, that you have, you are plugging in orders that are demanding 300 pieces, 400 pieces.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I think that all the department stores, particularly those based in the US, are really have been struggling to say what is our core competency, or what is their core competency? How do they go to market to compete? Samantha showed this line about the competition with e-commerce. And increasingly, as Alex was alluding to, it is through product, and it is through exclusive product. Prior to Ralph Lauren, joining Ralph Lauren about a year ago, I was at Tory Burch, and Nordstrom was a big customer of ours. They have a huge footwear business, and they demand exclusivity. Now, I think that our challenge is, you know, looking at exclusivity through the lens of the customer. Is it really just a different color embroidered pony on our polo shirt? Well, that's not really exclusive,
Okay.
right?
So defining what differentiation means.
Yes, and really trying to look at it through the lens of the customer, because really at the end of the day, what they think is all that matters.
Yeah.
Bhavesh, is with your scope of control, is it more a mono-brand retail business, or do you see yourself as a more wholesaling? How is that changing, if anything, with e-com? And I know you also have a make better philosophy within your company. Can you also comment on that a bit?
Yeah, I think we always, whether it's a wholesale or retail business, we always think of the consumer first. So no matter what channel we think we would want to sell, it's the consumer that matters. And if the consumer wants more iteration of those products, that leads to shorter minimums. And if the consumer wants more of that product, that leads to more volume. So I wouldn't really say that we really think by channels, but we think more by consumers and the experience the consumers are going to have when they shop our
chase
products.
after where the consumer is. So find those first moments of truth, whether it's e-com, wholesale, retail, you're there.
Yes.
Yeah. And this make better philosophy we were talking about, what is that about in terms of sourcing strategy? Does that go into a bit of the responsible fashion theme that we have here?
So I'll just share this story with you. So at the brand Napapijri, you know, we always say, and this is also an advice from me, is always start with the end in mind. And when you start with the end in mind, it's a bit like you're drafting your North Star, your vision, which leads to, you know, questions like, not what am I doing, but why am I here? Why am I doing this? And once you answer that question, when you go back, you start to the good example of designing. You design with a purpose, with an intent. And when we are all talking about sustainability, responsible fashion, etc., I think that mindset has to be embedded into the process from the start. As we're starting to design, and we ask ourselves questions: why are we doing this? And I think a biggest part of the solution of helping this planet, we would get the answer when we start thinking with that mindset as we're designing. I mean, I'm not saying that, I give you an example of, you know, recycled material. I'm not saying that we should not be using recycled material, but what I'm saying is, as when we are designing and we think, what's the purpose of that product, we would have other answers, which I think would get better benefit for us to not only safeguard the planet, but also make sure that we engage with our consumers and have the right conversations with them.
Alex, do you want to build on that, expand on that? Any comments you want to add in terms of, because when we were talking ahead of this meeting, you were talking, it's the brand essence, it was the innovation, it was the special things that you're going to do that makes the difference, and how you're adding value to that, and where does sourcing, purchasing come to play when you think about that, as you have many different brands under your umbrella.
Yeah, you know, we were working with a new company in the United States, which is an online retailer, on for me, a very interesting and probably the most interesting project I've worked on in the last 2 or 3 years. And this company specializes in resale clothing. So they buy used clothing in the United States and Canada, and they don't buy premium used clothing. They buy Gap and J. Crew, some premium brands, but really it's medium brands that they buy, and they process. I read this morning. They've processed 70 million garments in the last 4 years, which is a tremendous amount of volume that they take in. And the founder came to me and asked me if we would do a private label program for him. They know nothing about fashion. They don't have merchandisers, designers, they know nothing. But he saw 2 things. He saw that there was gaps in his assortment because he's dependent on people sending him clothes. And so he knows from searches that he's missing polyester blouses, or he's missing jeans, or he's missing, t-shirts, different categories. And also they don't take basics. They don't take, basic tees. And the second thing, he wanted to do something that was sustainable. He wanted to buy back all the new clothes that he sold. So essentially renting the clothes. And the brand will debut, I can't mention the name, but it's coming out in 3 weeks. Every garment has a QR code. We track the garment from cotton or poly forward through the manufacturing process. We know who's sewing each garment. So there's a social compliance story there. And we did all the design, we did everything for him, and we're shipping it and delivering it to his warehouse. And then for every garment that he's selling, he's offering an automatic buyback within 1 year. And he's selling a dress for $49, and he'll offer an automatic buyback for, let's say, $12 or $13 after a year. So for me, that's a very interesting story, a very important project.
Good effort. And we'll all be open ears and eyes to hear in 3 weeks' time when that brand is doing a splash to follow over. Good luck.
In 3 weeks, I'm going to be praying, right, that it works.
Craig, I know, in Turkey, most of the mono brands, when we start our own brands, we have a mixed blessing, meaning that it's a sizable country in Turkey, and hence you have many brands emerging in Turkey. We have a lot of consumers within Turkey that we can serve. Therefore, as many of the presidents, as they were making presentations, like Mavi, there are many brands that have come out of Turkey, and we'll see many of them going abroad and doing a lot of nice stuff. And Ralph Lauren, if I may do some comparisons, is a US brand, has started there, and has built a lot of its heritage thanks to the US setup. And is now, as far as what I could sense from what you were mentioning, is now going through more the 60-40 to a 50-50 in terms of, how do I conquer Japan, how do I go to Europe. So it also has, at different teething levels, a challenge of becoming more international, more global. What does that mean as a sourcing director, sourcing person for you, from a product, purchasing behavior, and would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. It's a big question. I'll try to give it a concise answer. It just makes our world a whole lot more complex from a sourcing perspective. So we are trying to put a brand presentation forward that is consistent, right? So that Ralph Lauren's stand is this great American brand, and we are a lifestyle brand, but we are trying to ensure that the product that we have in each distribution country will resonate with that consumer. So that requires a great deal of really micro-merchandising, micro-buying, and Alex and I alluded to that before. So having smaller buys to ensure that the Japanese customer is getting what they need, and what they want is different than the Chinese customer, is different than the Hong Kong customer, is different than the Southeast Asia customer, and it goes on and on and on. But beyond that, I would also say that we'll be looking at even sizing. Right, so today we have one size that is a global size, but from a technical perspective, and I'm sure we have some technical people in the audience, just the physics of the body of an Asian is different than a Caucasian. So whether it be not just height, but torso, key measurement placement. So that is going to add another level of complexity if we want to really maximize our opportunity in these other markets. And I will add that I alluded to the fact that the US is highly promotional, and that's the challenge. It is less promotional in the rest of the world, right? I'm really struck living in Asia and going back to the US, how everything seems to be on sale all the time.
So how you reach the consumer and
yes, but it's not the case in, say, Asia. Certainly it's maybe more promotional than it was 10 years ago, but it's a more profitable model. So how do we really lean in there and get the most out of that consumer and really delight him and her?
You know, I remember taking our brand and going into Holland. It was 4 or 5 years ago. We set up a company there. It's just neighbors, yeah? To Germany, where we're selling roughly 1 million pairs of jeans. But all of a sudden, the Dutch lady who's riding your bike, we realize is more agile and requires a different fit and technique in terms of the fabric we're offering, because she's more on the go than a German lady. And she's even slightly bigger than the average German lady. And it changed the whole technical spec. So it doesn't even have to be a Caucasian Chinese discussion, even within Europe. Just moving a few hundred kilometers south and north can make a big splash. So that really resonates with me. So just to wrap up, Samantha, team, is there anything that you think we missed out and that we should have said? I'm not force-feeding you anything. Samantha, great presentation. Is there anything you want to put out there that I may not have asked you, or you may just listening to the conversation we're having, you might want to add? Especially, again, Turkey-focused, maybe a lot of manufacturers here. From a US perspective, any tips, comments? More than welcome.
Sure. Well, a few tips for getting in front of US brands. And just to echo Craig, I mean, we use the phrase US brands, but they really are global brands. I mean, they have global supply chains and global sales and marketing. But it's really important to get in front of them and get to know them. So, building relationships. I think relationship building is one of the most important factors in the sourcing equation, and that can take some time. But knowing that brands are looking for some new sourcing destinations, definitely put that time into the relationship building. And also sustainability. The survey that I mentioned, we found that 85% of brands are putting even more resources, both financial resources and human capital, into their sustainability and social compliance. So making sure that you can help them with that and make that easy for them, I think would go a long way.
Thank you, Samantha. Bhavesh, any comments, final notes from your side?
Yeah, so I've been sourcing from Turkey for the last 20 years, and what I've seen from most of the partners we've partnered with, and my advice is to keep on doing that. I've seen a lot of agility, I've seen a lot of creativity, lots of innovation, and the understanding of businesses and market. And mind you, not every, I'm not going to mention names or countries, but not everybody gets that. And that is so crucial, which ties to what you just said, right? Build that partnership and relationship. If there is that communication and understanding. So I would really push you guys to keep on being who you are, but then start dreaming, because as we heard David say earlier, this could be huge.
Thank you, Bhavesh. Alex, you're also old Turkey veteran, so
old Turkey vet. Yeah, my first trip to Turkey was 1986.
There you go.
Yeah, I spent a semester here. I agree. Concentrate on what you're good at, especially for the US market. You're the best designers in the production world. So number one, that's what you need. No American company is going to come here to make basic t-shirts anymore. I'm not saying you won't get an order like that. Maybe you will if you're lucky. But that's not sustainable. What you have to do now is you have to hook the U.S. companies on your design, because as your currency, appreciates, right? As the economic conditions change, that will stay. That hook will stay in design, right? Price comes and goes. So the U.S. consumers want fashion. You have fashion. There's a relatability to the fashion that I see here in Turkey. There's always been a connection. You understand U.S. fashion. You understand the aesthetic, even though you're European. So I think that's number one. Don't gear your presentations to finished product, beautiful fabrics, everything that you do here. And I think you'll do quite well.
Thank you, Alex. Craig?
All great comments, and that I would certainly echo them. I guess I would just add that how you all work together as an industry group is incredibly important. So most big brands, whether they're US, European, or Asian, are looking to do more with fewer, whether that's more business with fewer suppliers or more business with fewer countries. So while I'm sure that you look across the aisle and you see your competitors, the success of Turkey as a region is dependent on more than just each individual supplier, but how you collectively work. So this spirit of, kind of, to use an American consultancy phrase, co-opetition, that will be a tough one to translate as well, but cooperative competition, but to work together to see how you can be and continue to remain relevant as an industry and a manufacturing country.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha, Bhavesh, Alex, Craig. I hope we were able to cover a wide areas of topics. What I will do, and then I can ask the big applause, what I'll do in practical sense, I'll be doing the gifting ceremony, and with permission from my president, we can have a group photo, and thank all the presenters and participators. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for sharing your ideas. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So, let's have a group photo. Okay, thank you. I hope I didn't spot you out in the room, so thanks, Bhavesh. Samantha, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
So, photo için gelmek istedim.
Oh, it's fine.
Go ahead.
Good to see you. Yes, indeed.
Moderatörümüz ve konuşmacılarımıza kuvvetli bir alkış rica ediyorum. Konuşmacılarımıza huzurlarınızda teşekkür ediyor ve kendilerini yerlerine uğurladıktan sonra Sayın Başkan buyurun.
Çok istiyorum. Cüneyt hızlı geçti. Soru sordurtmadı bize. Benim WhatsApp mesajıma birçok mesaj aldım. Arkadaşlarım soruyor. Neden herkes Amerikalı diye. Türkiye'nin ihracatı, bugünkü sabahki konuşmamda da bahsettim, yaklaşık %2'si Amerika'ya. Dolayısıyla çok büyük bir fırsat var bizim için ve Amerika'yı geliştirmek istiyoruz. Ve her ne kadar burada oturan arkadaşlar ve Samantha Amerika'nın derneği Mr. Trump'ın koyduğu tariflerden şikayet ediyorsa da bunun bizim için bir fırsat olacağını düşünüyoruz ve önemli bir ihracatımızda Amerika'ya gelişme olacak. Biraz önce Alex'e sordum. Dedim ki yine ikinci mesaj geliyor. 86'dan sonra tekrar permanently ne zaman İstanbul'a yerleşiyorsun diye. Başlıyoruz. Ofisi açacağız. Anons edebilir miyim dedi. Edebilirsin dedi. New Times Türkiye'de operasyonlarına başlayacak. Bilgi vermek istedim. Önemli bir
çok çok teşekkür ediyoruz bu güzel haberlerin de ardından.